In this video, we are going to discuss about different allowances. Now, in allowances, there are certain allowances which are fully exempt from tax. There are certain allowances which are partially exempted and partially taxable, and there are certain allowances which are fully taxable also. So, first of all, we will understand what are the allowances and what is allowances. An allowance is a financial benefit given to employee by employer over and above the regular salary. So over and above the regular salary, if employee is receiving something from the employer, then it is called allowances. Here, financial benefit, that means monetary benefit. If employee is received some monetary benefits from the employer, then you can say that it is allowances. The benefits are provided to cover expenses that may be incurred to facilitate the discharge of service. For example, conveyance allowance is paid to food expenses incurred for commuting to the workplace. So why conveyance allowance is provided? Conveyance allowance is provided to food the expenses incurred for commuting to workplace, means from home to workplace, whatever expenses you are incurring to sponsor that expenditure, or to, you can say that, to foot that expenditure, to cope up with that expenditure, conveyance allowance is provided. Some of these allowances are taxable under the head salaries. A few of them again could be partly taxable, and few others are non-taxable, or you can say that fully exempt from taxes. So today we, in this lecture, we are going to discuss different types of allowances. So first, we will discuss allowances which are fully taxable allowances. Now dearness allowance. So this is the first one which is fully taxable, and it is called dearness allowance. Now dearness allowance, DA, is allowance paid to employee as a cost of living adjustment, allowing paid to the employee to cope up with inflation. So to cope up with the situation of inflation, some allowances is provided to employee by the employer. That is called dearness allowance. DA paid to employee is fully taxable. It is fully taxable, and that you have to remember for MCQ purpose also. Dearness allowance is fully taxable. It is not partly taxable, partly exempted. It is fully taxable with the salary. The Income Tax Act mandate that tax liability for DA along with salary must be declared in the field of return. So whenever you person is filing return, he has to declare what amount of dearness allowance he has received along with the salary. It is compulsory to declare DA amount along with the salary while he is declaring his total taxable income. Now next one is overtime allowance. Employers may provide an overtime allowance to employee working over and above the regular work hours. So then it is called overtime allowance. This is called overtime, and any allowance received for this is fully taxable. So it is fully taxable here. So you have to remember this also. Okay, whenever person is receiving any allowances which is over and above his work, then it is fully taxable. City compensatory allowance. City compensatory allowance means what? To compensate living standard. City compensatory allowance is paid to employee in an urban center which may be highly expensive, and to cope up with the inflated living cost in the cities. So there is a in normal situation also, there are in certain cities cost of living is very high. So now what we have to do to inflated, they are living in inflated living cost. So to cope up with this situation, what employer is doing, they are providing city compensatory allowance to compensate the living standard of a particular city. They are providing this city compensatory allowance. This allowance is fully taxable, when a judge receive compensatory allowance, it is not taxable. So this is you have to remember, when any judge receives any compensatory allowance, it is not taxable. This you have to remember for MCQ purpose also. City compensatory allowances received by judge is not taxable. Otherwise, in all other cases, city compensatory allowance is fully taxable. It is fully taxable. It is written clearly here. Now, next point is tiffin oblique meals allowance. Sometimes employer may provide tiffin oblique meal allowances to the employees. This is also fully taxable. So these are the short questions that may come into the examination. What types of allowances are fully taxable? So this is a list of fully taxable allowances. Now next one, fixed medical allowance. So fixed medical allowance, this is an allowance by the employer when the employee or his family member falls sick for the cost incurred on their treatment. If any such reimbursement exceeds rupees 15,000 per year, the same is taxable. So up to 15,000 it is not taxable, but if such kind of reimbursement is more than 15,000, then it is fully taxable. Reimbursement means giving back. First expenses are incurred by employee, then it is that expenditure is given back to the employee by the employer, so that is called reimbursement. And reimbursement, if it is exceeding 50,000, then it is taxable. That means what? Up to 15,000 it is not taxable. A warden allowance, when an employer pays an allowance to an employee working as a warden, that is keeper in an educational institution, the allowance received is fully taxable. So whatever allowance received by a warden of a particular institution, then it is fully taxable. So that you have to keep in mind. So that these are the allowances which can be asked in the exam, that it is fully taxable allowances. Number one, dearness allowance, overtime allowance. Number two, number three, city compensatory allowance. Number four, tiffin oblique meal allowances. Next one, fixed medical allowances. And next one, last one, warden allowances. Now, some more allowances we have to discuss. And the most important allowances that we are going to discuss is house rent allowance, HRA, section 10 subsection 13A, rule 2A. It can be asked in 5 marks also, and it can be asked for 1 mark MCQ. And in 1 mark MCQ, how it can be asked, I will tell you while I am teaching these allowances. And any allowance to meet the expenses in connection with the rent of the house, by whatever name called, it is called house rent allowance. To cope up with the rent, and any allowances to in connection with the rent is provided to employee, it is called house rent allowances. And what is the tax treatment for the same? Minimum of the following is exempted from tax. Now, out of these three, minimum is exempted. Now, first one is actual HRA received. HRA means house rent allowances received. Second one is an amount equal to 50% of salary or 40% of salary. Here, meaning of salary is one means A. Salary meaning is given when house is situated in any other place for relevant period. So now in this you have to think, when we have to take 50% and when we have to take 40%. Answer is very simple. If house is situated in metro city, then 50%. If house is situated other than this city, then 40% of salary you have to make. Now, which cities are considered as metro city? Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai. These four cities are considered as metro cities. Or you can say that in metro cities, 50% of the salary you have to take. And other than metro city, you have to take 40% of salary. And last step, the excess of rent paid over 10% of salary. That is rent paid minus 10% of salary. This way, this is the third step. This arithmetically, it is very easy to remember this one. So you can write down this one also, or you can write down the formula written arithmetically also in your exam. How MCQ can be asked? So what is this small sum can be asked from this, in which you have to find out exempted amount or taxable amount. Now, what is the meaning of salary? Because here we are talking about 50% of salary, 40% of salary, but you should know what is the meaning of salary. So, salary means basic plus DA. If it forms a part of retirement benefit, then only you have to take full DA. You don't have to consider. We have already discussed what is forming part, what is not forming part. If it is forming part, then only you have to consider. Now commission as a fixed percentage of turnover, that means if person receive any commission, but it should be on turnover achieved by him, then only it is deductible, otherwise it is not deductible. Now notes, salary shall be determined on due basis for the period for which the employee occupies rented accommodation in the previous year and gets HRA. That means here salary, whenever you are finding salary, you have to consider salary on due basis. That means even though it is not received, you have to calculate that, you have to consider that salary also on due basis. Accrued but not received, then you have to consider it. And employee occupies, for which employee occupies rented accommodation in the previous year and gets HRA. So when person will get this exemption, when he is staying in a rented house. If he is not staying in a rented house, then there is no use of this, because this exemption is not available. So here one can do planning also, like if individual is staying with his parents, then they can do a one planning. They can uh, give rent to their parents, and they can claim this deduction. If parents are the owner of the house, then they can pay the amount of rent to their parents, and two things can be done. You can get exemption also, and your parents gets a expenditure also for their daily needs. So this is one type of tax planning you can do, and it is tax planning. It is not a tax evasion. Exemption is not available if employee lives in his own house. So this exemption is not available if person is living in his own house or in a house for which he does not pay any rent. So simple rule, if you are staying in your own house, there is no deduction. If you are not paying any rent, there is no deduction. Now for criteria of 50% or 40% of salary deduction, place of employment is not significant. Where you are doing job, it is not important, but place where the house is situated is important. Like Mumbai is metro city, and let us say Vadodara is not a metro city. In this case, what he is doing job in Mumbai, but house is situated in Vadodara. Now in this case, he is residing in Vadodara, and for that he is paying rent. So now in this case, whether you have to take 50% of salary or 40% of salary. So here it is clearly written, for the criteria of 50% of or 40% of salary as a deduction, place of employment, that is place of employment in this case is Mumbai, is not significant. But place where the house is situated is important. That means house is situated in Vadodara. So that is why in this case you have to take 40% of salary. So 40% of salary you have to take in this case. Same way, you can identify different cases. Deduction from HRA depends on salary of the employee. Amount of HRA, place of resident, not place of employment, rent paid by employee. So these are the factors which will decide how much deduction you will get. That is salary of the employee, amount of HRA, place of residence, and rent paid by employee. This, if you club all these provisions, then you will get how much deduction you are going to get, and it is easily calculation is possible. Now let us discuss one example to make you understand more about HRA. Mr. X, a resident of Ajmer. Now here you have to take this Ajmer. Ajmer is a not a metro city. That means in this case whether you will take 40% or 50% of salary. So in this case you will take 40% of salary. Whenever you are calculating salary, you have to take 40% of salary and receives 48,000 as a basic salary. So what basic salary is receiving? 48,000 for the previous year 2021-22. In addition, he gets 4,800 as dearness allowance. So this is his dearness allowance and forming part of salary. That means you have to consider all the salary because it is forming part. Now, next thing that you have to take is 7% of commission on sales made by him. So he is getting 7% of commission and this is on turnover. Now you have to identify what is the turnover achieved by Mr. X. Sales made by X during the relevant previous year is rupees 86,000 and rupees 6,000 as HRA. That means he has received house rent allowance of 6,000. So HRA received is 6,000, turnover is 86,000 and there is no change in salary in last month or something else. So now he however pays 5,800 as a rent. So total rent paid is 5,800. Determine the quantum of exemption of house rent allowances. Now you have to calculate computation of taxable house rent allowances of Mr. X for the assessment year 2022-23 is as follows. So you have to prepare two columns, particulars, amount rupees, amount rupees. In that, minimum of the following will be exempt. House rent allowance received 6,000. Now from this is amount that you have received. From this how much deduction is available that you have to find out. Now for that what you have to do? Less minimum of the following being exempted under section 10 subsection 13A. First one, actual amount received. How much actual amount received that you have to find out. So actual amount received is 6,000. Then 40% of salary. Why 40% of salary? As I already told you, he is living in Ajmer. And as he is living in Ajmer, you have to take 40% of salary. And Ajmer is not a metro city. You can write down this as a note also. Now rent paid minus 10% of salary. Rent paid is 5,800 and 10% of salary is 5,882. Now here two things are important. Here second step is 40% of salary. In third step also 10% of salary. So before doing that, you have to find out what is the total salary. So here we will do the calculation of salary. Salary for the purpose of HRA, particulars, amount rupees. So what is basic salary? 48,000. What is dearness allowance? 4,800. Commission, that is 7%, because here we are talking about the commission which is received by employee on the turnover achieved by him. So 86,000, if you make 7% of it, you will get 6020. And all this information is provided. DA is total forming part. You have to consider full DA. Basic salary is also given and all the data is per annum, not per month. So total salary is 58,820. Now you have to make 40% of 58,000. 40% of 58,820, you will get 23,520. So now here what is rent paid? So rent paid is given in this question 5,800 minus 10% of salary. If you make 10% of 58,820, you will get 5,882. If you deduct this 5,882 from 5,800, you will get negative figure. So you have to write down nil here. So from these three value, minimum value, lowest value will become your exemption. So lowest value is nil. So what is taxable amount? Whatever amount you have received, it will become taxable because nothing, no exemption is available. So full amount is taxable. So this is the allowance in which depends. There are certain criteria. You have to follow that criteria to get the answer. This can be asked in 1 mark MCQ also. If it is asked in 1 mark MCQ, then don't do any calculation. You can directly make out. But if same is asked in 5 marks, then or 4 marks or 3 marks, you have to make full calculation. You have to write down all the steps. You have to write down how salary you have find out. And remember, whenever you are writing the answer of MCQ, please read the question carefully. Whether it is asked what is the exempted amount or what is taxable amount. In this question it is asked hence what is find out the exempted HRA under section 10 subsection 13a. So exemption under section 10 subsection 13a is nil. And but if same question is asked what is taxable portion, so taxable portion or taxable amount is 6,000. That is total amount of gratuity, sorry, total amount of HRA received. So this is fully taxable amount. So this is all about HRA. Now we will discuss some more allowances. Allowance is deduction from which depends on actual expenditure, section 10 subsection 14 clause 1. So now here minimum of the following shall be exempted: actual amount received or actual expenditure incurred for such purpose. Now like travel or transfer allowance, daily allowance, conveyance allowance. I already explained you what is conveyance allowance in this video at the starting of the video. Transfer or travel allowance means if person is going outside for the office work. Daily allowance is also sometimes if some person is working in an office and in the same city, if he is going somewhere for the office work also, so for that if any allowance is provided, then it is called daily allowances. Helper allowance or assistant allowance means to help, then along with to that he can appoint some helper allowance is also provided, then it is called helper allowance. Research allowance to do some research allowance is provided. To stitch a uniform allowances is provided. So these all allowances you can remember this by one shortcut: TCHRU. T means traveling allowance, transfer allowance. C means conveyance allowance, H means helper allowance, R means research allowance, U means uniform allowance. So you can remember by this acronym TCHRU. So you can remember this, and this all expenditure depends on how much you spend. Now person has received helper allowance of 5,000, but he has spent 6,000. So actual expense is 6,000. Amount received is 5,000. So now what is the exemption amount in this case? Exemption amount is amount received and actual expenditure. So what amount is exempted here? So whichever is lower. So exemption amount is 5,000. So now what is the taxable portion? So taxable part is nil, because whatever he has received is totally exempted. Now say take another example. Same helper allowance he has received. Let us say 10,000. He has spent 9,000. Now in this case, whichever is lower. So lower is 9,000. So what is exempted amount? So exempted amount is 9,000. And what is taxable amount? Taxable amount is 1,000. Why? Because he has received 10,000. Out of 10,000, how much he has spent? 9,000. So what is exempted amount? Whichever is lower from these two amount. So from these two amount, 10,000 and 9,000. Lower amount is 9,000. So exemption is now 9,000, but he has received 10,000. So 1,000 is taxable. So that you have to remember what amount is received and what amount he has spent for a particular expenditure. That will decide his amount of examination. In last, I am giving you one more example so that your concept gets stronger, like uniform allowance. Now before I give answer, you have to think, and you have to give me two answer: what is the taxable amount and what is the exempted amount. Like he has received 8,000 and he has spent 10,000. Now what is taxable portion and what is exempted portion? You can write down in the comment box also. So taxable portion is, think your answer in your mind and give me the answer. So here I ask you, what is a taxable portion? So first answer is nil. And what is the exempted portion? 8,000. Why? Because he has received 8,000 but he has spent 10,000. So he cannot get exemption more than the amount he has received. So that is why only exemption is of 8,000 but taxable portion is nil. So if you are giving this answer, then you are on right track. So now these are the allowances, like children education allowance, children hostel allowances, transport allowances. These we have taken in our syllabus. So we are discussing only these three. So in this case, it does not depend how much you have spent. There is fixed limit which is given by government, below above which exemption is not available. Any allowances to meet the expenses in connection with the education of children by whatever name called is called considered as children education allowance. And minimum of the following is exempted from tax. First one is 100 per month per child to the maximum of two children. That means this is a fix. Maximum deduction 100 he will get per child. If person has two children, he will get 100 plus 100, because two children, that means 200. But if he has three children, then also in that case he is going to receive only 200, because maximum of two children he will get the exemption. Now here you have to remember, this is also important for MCQ purpose, what maximum amount of deduction he will get in case of children education allowance. So 100 rupees per month per child, maximum of two children. Now, actual amount received for each child to the maximum of two children. So, what actual amount he has received, and this is the fixed limit set up by the government. So, from this two, whichever is lower will become exempted amount, and balance is taxable. Balance, if any, if it is positive answer, then it is taxable. Now, same is the case for children hostel allowance. And any allowances to meet the hostel expenses of children by whatever name called treatment, minimum of the following is exempt from tax. Rupees 300 per month per child to the maximum of two children. Actual amount of received for each child to the maximum of two children. So this is all about children hostel allowances. Same, it is same as children education allowance. Just there is a difference in amount. In this amount is 300, whereas education allowance amount is 100. And here also maximum you will get, person will get deduction of two children, and here also person is getting deduction up to maximum of two children. But remember students, this is a maximum amount. But if he receives only 80 rupees per child, then he will get deduction of 80 rupees only. But if it is more than 80, like if he person has received 180 rupees, then in that case maximum deduction of 100 rupees is available. So you have to think it and apply the formula. Don't take 100 as a straight limit. But if person has received only 80 rupees, let us say if person has received 80 rupees per child, and 120 rupees, first child he has received 80 rupees, for second child he has received 120 rupees. So now for first child he will get deduction of 80 only, and for second child he will get deduction of 100, and for third child let us say he has received 150. Now he will not claim this deduction. That means here no deduction is available, nothing will be available, because deduction is available only for two children. So 80 plus 100, that means 1 in 180 multiplied by 12 you have to make it. So you have to remember this. Your maximum deduction is 100 per month per child, that is 200 for two children, but in never case it is more than 200. We will understand because this with one example. I have taken one example in the same video. Now, transport allowance, any allowance by whatever name called to meet the expenditure for the purpose of traveling between the place of residence and place of duty. So that is called transport allowance, and it is now taxable. But this deduction, benefit of this deduction is available to person who is blind, deaf or dumb, orthopedically handicapped. Minimum of the following shall be exempted: actual amount received or 3200 per month. No exemption is available to the assessee other than specified above. If person is physically challenged, then this exemption is available, otherwise no deduction is available. Now let us discuss one of the question so that your understanding gets stronger. Mr. LK receive education allowance of rupees 80 per month for first child, 90 per month for second child, 120 per month for third child. That means he is receiving children education allowance and different amount is given. Now he also received hostel allowance of 1000 per month for all children. We are assuming that this 1000 is for all children. None of his children are studying, that is not material. Find taxable children education allowance and hostel allowances. Computation of taxable children education allowance for Mr. LK for the assessment year 2021-22. Now hostel allowance, how much he has received? 1000 per month, multiply by 12, that is 12,000. Now, what is the limit in case of hostel allowance? Maximum limit is 300, but you have to find it out. 1000 per month, that means he has three children. Now you have to divide this by 3. So amount is 333.33. That means for every child, for each child he is receiving 333. And what is the maximum limit in case of hostel allowance? 300. So this is more. So that means he will get full 300 per child, because here no bifurcation is given for how much is for first child, how much is for second child, how much is for third child. This type of bifurcation is not given. So what we have done, we have divided total amount he has received by 3 because he has 3 children, and we got 333, and it is more than 300, so full 300 is available per child. So 300 multiply by 2 multiply by 12. Why 2? Because maximum 2 children deduction is available. Why 12? Because 300 per month deduction is available. You have to convert into per year, so you will get 7200. Now if you deduct 7200 from 12,000, you will get 4800. So this is your first answer. Now in case of children education allowance, you how much you are getting? For first child 80 into 12, for second child 90 into 12, and for third child 120 into 12. So if you make total of these three bracket, you will get 3480. But how much deduction is available? So less exempted is 100 plus 90. Why 100? Because you are claiming deduction, you can claim deduction for only two children. So you will claim deduction of 120 and 90. So for 120 you will receive 100 rupees, because maximum limit is 100, so you will not get 120 rupees. And for say 80 and 90, you choose 90, because in this you will get more deduction. If you choose 80, then you will get less deduction. So everybody prefers to get more deduction. By taking more deduction, they are going to pay less amount of tax. So that is why 100 plus 90 into 12, so 2280. So total how much is taxable? 1200 is taxable portion. If you deduct 2280 from 3480, you will get 1200. So taxable allowance is 6000. So this is the allowances. Now why we have not multiplied this answer with 2? Because we are calculating, we are adding two amount. Here only 300 is for 1 month, one child, sorry. And here 100 for first child and 90 rupees for second child. So already we have taken two children. So there is no need to multiply by 2. So that is why directly we have multiplied by 12. So this is the answer. Now, education allowance is allowed only for any two children of the SSC. Therefore, education allowance of first child, that which is the lowest one, that is rupees 80 only, is not considered, because to avail the higher deduction. If you have any doubt in all the allowances, then please write down in a comment box. I will try to make reply of all your queries. Thank you very much for watching my video till end.